Welcome to Living from the Soul. This is your host, Sam Terode, and today I'm speaking with Emilia Ann. Emilia is an artist and champion of creativity. She uses many different media, including poetry, painting, photography, music, and dance, with the aim of being an open channel to whatever the universe wants to express through her. I started following Emilia on Facebook a few years ago, and soon after that she embarked on 100 Days of Creativity, a personal challenge to work on something creative for 100 straight days. She didn't stop there, and now she's exceeded 1,000 days of creative expression. I wanted to talk with Emilia because I struggle with procrastination and perfectionism when it comes to my own creative projects. If you can identify with that, I'm sure you'll enjoy our conversation. Go to Emilia's website, divineandhuman.com, and sign up for her newsletter and check out her other offerings, which include classes and meditations. It's great to finally meet you, Emilia.
Hi, Sam.
So soon after I discovered you and started following you on Facebook, you announced that you were going to do 100 days of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And what in your life led up to that decision?
My whole life, and some of the immediate precipitating factors were like, I had been working for someone and had an idea of like, oh, okay, I think I'm going to grow in this company and like I'm going to be able to give my gifts and be my full self. And it became obvious that actually that wasn't going to happen. And that kind of shifted my brain for a second. I was like, oh, okay, like if I'm not going to be able to like really, real, truthful, authentic way get to explore who I am and bring that to the world through this company, I'm actually not going to keep putting my full self into it. Okay, so I like stepped back and I was meditating for a little bit. I'd actually already been on like a 1.5-year surrender experiment. So many things happened up to that point. It wasn't like it came out of nowhere. And had done a lot of different meditation commitments. Like even years before that, I committed to making a video every day for 100 days, and just to like release layers of self-consciousness. And I'd also already danced on Facebook Live for 40 days in a row, like 6 months prior to that. So again, it wasn't just like out of nothing.
Did that help you overcome self-consciousness? Because it sounds crazy to me to imagine committing to that.
Yes. Wow. Hugely. And I'd also done 32 episodes of a podcast where I filmed it live and streamed it live and was like, okay, this is just me talking on my own. Like, do I have the courage to do the thing? Yes, all of those things had already happened. 5 years of like surrendering, doing like personal growth from when I was 21. So it's not, again, there's all many things, but in that space, all led up to a point where I was like, okay, I can see that I've spent most of, if not all of my life, really trying to lift other people up and like giving all of my energy and my skills to like someone who I think is awesome and then I want to like help them or like relieve their stress or do all these things. And so like all my energy was always going into highlighting other people, which is a beautiful thing. I could have kept doing that and probably would have learned so many things along the way. But at that point in my life, it felt like, okay, well, what if I did something totally for myself? Like what would I want to do? What would I want to create if I'm not putting my energy only into other people? And within weeks, I was meditating, and then a little question floated into the back of my head, and it was, what if you committed to doing something creative every day for 100 days? And even with everything that I'd done up to that point, that still felt scary to me. That was big. That was not like, oh yeah, easy. It was like, that's a big commitment. It's a big commitment. And I don't even know what I would create today. I have no concept of what that looks like. And at the same time, there's always this like deeper knowing, like there's power in that. Like I will change. I'm not going to be the same person on the other side. And I was in kind of more of like a meaningless, depressive state in that time too. It's just like, okay, what I'm doing isn't working. What should I do? There were definitely, like, I created like a little framework for myself of just like, okay, I'll do something creative every day. It felt important that it wasn't limited to one medium. I had a background in photography. I had my own photography business for 7 years. And I was like, oh, I could do 100 days of photography, but that was like, again, no energy in the body for that. It was like, eh. So it was like that it could be many different mediums, which also supports exploration and curiosity too, and allows flexibility, right? So it could be anything. And that it didn't always have to be profound. Felt important too. Like, I give myself a lot of flexibility on allowing creativity to change shape and form each day. So yeah, like some days could be like a doodle, and then another day could be a whole children's book. Like one day could be a salad, another day could be a video that I spent 10 hours editing, if I have the time for that. So lots of flexibility to fit, again, my energy levels, my emotions, my schedule, because I did still work during that first part of the 100 days. So yeah, this opening, this curiosity, and I did. I committed to doing it, and I also committed to not planning ahead.
Oh, wow.
Because what I could have done, right? I could have been like, okay, I'm going to do something creative for 100 days. I could have then made a spreadsheet of everything that I wanted to make and robotically executed it. Yeah. Right? Like, it could have been like, all right, I want to do this. I want to do this. Oh, I had this idea 5 years ago. Like, I want to finally do that now. I want to do it. And then each day could have just been like a to-do list. And it, again, I was like, oh, no, that's not what this is about. Right. So there was such like a present moment practice of, for example, day one, a poem downloaded in its entirety. And it wrote itself across the insides of my eyelids. Like, I watched it. Yeah. Like, and there was this sensation of like, this has never happened before. What is happening? This is insane. This is cool. I'm just going to let it happen. And then I took a notebook and I wrote it down in its entirety. And then the next day I was listening to a song and I was like, I feel like that poem fits over this section of this song. And so then I recorded myself speaking the words over the song. And then the next day I took my camera and the song and like a little speaker out into the desert and filmed a dance video to the song, spoken word poem, and then made the dance video and posted it. And that, like, day 3, that was like my favorite thing that I'd ever made in my life up until that point. And so many lessons came from that, in that, like, day 4, I had to completely surrender that I just made my favorite thing yesterday. And it was like, okay, what's today? Yeah. Like, today's a whole bit, like, whereas if I wouldn't have had a commitment to do that for 100 days, I could have just sat at day 3 and been like, I made a thing, like look at me, like this is the coolest thing. And so it's almost like allowing a wave to come up and riding it and then surrendering and knowing that another wave's going to come, and like having the rest periods in between and not holding on to the wave that was yesterday and not trying to plan the wave that's for tomorrow, because so much magic came in not knowing and like being present to what was there each day. Because like there's so many things that I couldn't have planned that I would have been like, no, I got to do this thing because I planned what I was going to do. So this like brilliant thing that's trying to come in could have been like missed. It could have been missed if I was planning.
Wow. It sounds like there's a lot of magic in that commitment you made. You made the commitment, and then the next day a poem appears.
It was actually within an hour. It was that day, because I committed that day. Day 1 was the day I had the idea. I was like, okay, I'll do it. And then I continued meditating, and then the poem came in. it was like an instant shift. It's like, okay, you said yes, and now this is available. You said yes, and now this is available. Yeah, I could tell stories for like there's so much magic. Like,
Yeah.
and the thing is, I feel like there's things out there, like people out there that say like you can't have that consistent access to magic. Like it can like come in sometimes, but it's not all the time.
Mhm.
But that's not my experience. That's not my experience at all, actually.
It sounds like you had to trust that you wouldn't run out of ideas.
Yes, at the beginning I had to trust that, and then later I had to really surrender ideas because there's so many. Like,
Mm.
I'd actually every once in a while I'd do like idea cleanses because I could feel I'd start to hold them because more ideas would come in than I could do, and so I'd make lists of things that I was thinking about. I was like, okay, I saw this image, I saw that, like, okay, this is a poem, this is a thing, this is a thing. I'd write it all down, and then I'd be like, and if I don't do any of them, that's fine, you know, because it would start to get heavy if I didn't cleanse the ideas out.
Yeah.
Which I'm actually probably I need to do that again soon. Like straight up, like okay, because in some ways it feels like you tap into something that is so immense and beyond what the mind can, like the mind wants to control it or anticipate, and it can't.
Uh,
Yeah, it wants to understand, it wants to it wants to know that like things will get finished or be worthwhile or all come together in some cohesive way. And what I found, because again, we're past day 1000, right? So what I found is that there was so much more going on under the surface of what was being created that I'm still discovering. Like the
mm,
things that I created in the first 100 days were deeply meaningful and are actually possibly parts of things that are now coming together now, but I didn't know it at the time. So, like for example, like a very like small example, there was one day where my friend Andrew and I went out to just take some photos by the creek, just for fun, and we took some photos that we liked. It was great. And as we were leaving, like the sunset was beautiful, and he was like, "Oh, do you want to take some photos with the sunset?" And so we pulled over to the side of the road, and we took some like silhouette photos, which is not like my creative edge, like to do silhouette photos against the sunset. Like it's pretty like well known as being very cliche to do that. But if I was like, yeah, sure, like let's do the thing. And so I was taking some photos of him, and he asked me if I wanted some photos of me, and I was like, sure. And so I was doing like these things with my hands, and we took the photos, and I just put them on my computer, and I was like, I'm not going to post these, and I'm not going to use them for anything, right? Like, forget it. No. But then a couple weeks later, I saw an image of what my logo was supposed to be, like what my new logo was supposed to be, and it's my hands. It's my hands in
Yeah.
this little like kind of moon shape, and I was like, oh, the hands are they're in one of the silhouette photos. And so I went through the silhouette photos, and there was one that had the hands in it, and I was like, okay, that's it. So then I took the silhouette photo and made a logo that I love. Like it feels like the thing, but it came out of something seemingly insignificant that happened along the way. And there's
Mm.
more examples of that than I could ever say. But like that everything can be important and part of something that you don't know.
Yeah, and I love your logo too. I was going to ask you about
Were
that.
you really?
Like,
I don't tell that story that
yeah.
often. Like, that's how it came.
So I was kind of picturing you doing it as a design project. Like, okay, today I'm going to do a graphic design project. So it's interesting how it came together just from something you had done before.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, it could just be like taking photos as you go, and like somewhere later, like it seems like the mind stores everything. It delivers things back into my
Yeah.
consciousness the moment I need to know. I'm like, I'll be working on like a project, and I'll be like, oh, like I need an image for this. And I'll be like, wait. uh 6 months ago, I took this picture. I didn't know what it was for. Oh, it's for this.
Yeah.
And then I'll go get it and it'll be exactly correct. So it bypasses logical processing to a certain extent too.
You're building up the subconscious well, or there's like a well of creativity, and by doing something every day, you've amassed a huge amount of source material that
Correct.
you can then combine in surprising ways.
Correct. And it like my whole body geeks out just thinking about it. It's so deep and it just continues to get deeper, as I go. Like when I look back at what was made, it's like deeply symbolic. I was like, oh, that was like, it's almost like foreshadowing. And sometimes like things just like peek out for a little bit. And then later you're like, oh, like this was a whole universe and I didn't know. Like that was like the first glimpse of it. So it's like I'm discovering the storylines as I go. And they're so brilliantly created that it blows my mind to get to witness it. Because again, it's beyond what I could have planned or thought or like micromanaged.
Because all this is flowing through your unique perspective and your experiences, it all does end up tying together in the end, even if you're doing a song one day, a poem the next, because it's yours, it will then have these connections between the different pieces. You also remind me, Ralph Waldo Emerson talks about the importance of amassing a storehouse of raw material. So it's like having an attic, and you have this attic stocked with things you've read here and there, your experiences. And then one day you go up there and the candle of inspiration casts a light on some particular objects that you hadn't noticed before. And that's how he described inspiration.
That's beautiful. And also, I don't think I've ever heard anyone describe it before, but that's what it feels like. You always just have access, or I always just have access to what I need, and it'll just become clear. But also how important it is, I've been aware of this lately, ongoing forever, is to take note of what we're collecting.
Yeah.
Because we could just collect memes. We could just collect memes. We could collect violent TV shows. We could collect, like what we put in matters. And so in some ways, it's become even a deeper awareness and practice of like, okay, if what I create is some combination of everything that I've exposed myself to or gone through, like I can't control everything, obviously, right? Like trauma still happens and like situations that I'm like, I consciously wouldn't have chose that, but maybe it was serving a deeper purpose, probably. But for the times where I do have the more obvious choice of what to input, I make that choice very consciously. I'm like, okay, I admire this person. This frequency is powerful. This is potent. These people are beautiful. Like this person has a good heart. Choosing what I expose myself to.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It changes what comes out too. And because I've been able to see, again, very clearly how much, in so many ways, how I am affected by my environment or how much it translates. Allow yourself to be around people that inspire you, or you feel loved by, or all the things. And because I do believe that love and creativity are the same, and like genius and love are the same. So true genius can only stem from frequencies of love or higher than that. And so to think that it comes from anywhere else is kind of misguided. Yeah. So, and like whatever it takes to put ourselves in the presence of beauty, in the presence of genius, in the presence of genius as love or just love, the more we refine our hearts, the more we have access to creativity, and creativity that is meaningful.
It's kind of a counterintuitive idea of genius being love, because we often have models of people we think of as geniuses who might be very cruel and demanding to people around them. So could you expand on that idea?
I would love to. I can feel within myself so many awarenesses have been made very obvious to me in this process. And in some ways, what I've posted and what I've shared is only like the scratch of the surface of what what I feel has been revealed to me. and I'm like, okay, like I wonder when I'm going to share about that. And what genius is feels very close to my heart. Although I cannot claim to be like the first awareness of this, Dr. David R. Hawkins is one of my favorite teachers. And in Power versus Force, his first extremely successful book, he has a whole chapter about what genius really is. And when I read it, I was like, that's cool. And I read it like years ago, like 6, 7 years ago. And now it feels more like I have an understanding of it in my body more. Like it feels real to me. It's not just words. The hallmarks of true genius is simplicity, efficiency, love, nobility, humility, like all of these aspects of greatness. And that is very separate from our mental cognitive capability. We like people are born with beautiful capacities and potentials in their minds. But again, like the frequencies that you expose yourself to can also determine how those are manifested or and how they come out. The mind is just, again, it's just like a thing. It's like a car, and you can put good fuel into your car and you can put bad fuel into your car, and it'll like run well or not. And the cleanest fuel is frequency of love. And that actually, like, in some ways clarifies the mind too. Like the mind changes the way it's experienced. Love cleanses it. And again, then the more it's cleansed, the more it can be receptive to things that are true. That are true.
Well, I read that book, Power versus Force, a couple of years ago, and I completely forgot that part, or it didn't stick with me. So it's great that you reminded me of it.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing with Dr. Hawkins' work. It's like, for me, like the first time, like literally the first time I read it, it was gobbledygook. Like I couldn't understand it.
I can see that.
And I think someone had warned me. They're like, you're not going to get it the first time. And I said, oh, okay, great. Read it twice. I said, oh, okay, great. So the first time I read it, completely unattached to understanding it. I just read it for the sake of reading it. I was like, I don't know what he's talking about, but I'm committed to this process. And then I read it again, and it completely made sense. And so, in which he talks about, he said, we learn through familiarity and not through actually like this forcing mental, like, I'm going to understand. And so being in this relaxed receiving state where we just trust that we'll understand what we need to understand when we need to understand it allows understanding to come in on a deeper level. And yeah, so like I had read his book, I really dove deeply into his work, but the second time I read it, I felt like a genius. It's like, I'm incredible, I get it. And then even just in the last couple of years, rereading his books again, I'm like, I didn't hear that at all the first time. Like, this is profound. Like, and experiences that he had talked about, it feels like I had similar experiences in certain ways too, which blows my mind. And in Letting Go, his book, Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender, he talks about how when we let go of our emotions and we're in non-resistance to our emotions, often on the other side of that is creativity. And so now I feel like I've experienced, because like I committed to his work in 2015 and then created. So like, they're all like the amount of inner emotional work that was done prior to committing to creativity feels like that created the space to allow it to come in at the level that it came in. And then I also continued to do that work all along the way. And like really noticing like if layers of perfectionism came up, or anticipating, or fear. Like there were so many times I thought I was going to die, didn't die, turns out. Like, and a lot of the times I'd feel like I was going to die right before something really beautiful and profound would happen. Yeah. Like I was like, oh, okay, all right, if I think I'm going to die, that might mean that there's actually a lot of gifts in that. But having enough, I guess, wherewithal or affirmation to know that I'm like, okay, like the things I'm feeling right now, I know aren't the full truth. And if I can breathe through them and surrender them, like I don't know what exists on the other side of it, but it's just a process that I'm committed to, that I believe is inextricable from what has manifested externally. So.
Yeah, it seems a lot of times expressing emotions then opens you up to be able to
Mm-hmm.
to do whatever creative thing you want to work on.
Yep.
Where do you think that resistance comes from? Like you described it as feeling like you want to die, and I feel I feel that kind of resistance before doing just about anything.
I guess it's normal. I don't know. Like where it comes from, again, I don't know. I don't know where it comes from.
You wouldn't say that you've conquered it.
No. No. It feels like it reveals deeper layers to be worked on. As in meditation this morning, I was seeing this, like, in some ways, like life feels like it delivers me the opportunity to continue to make the same choice over and over again, like to choose love, or to choose to turn my attention towards truth, or to turn my attention towards beauty, to turn my attention towards innocence, to turn my attention towards like deeper surrender. In some ways it feels like it delivers tests of like, okay, do it with this one now. Like, do it with, okay, all right, good, you've done it with all these, all right, here, this one's a little tricky, can you do it this time? And the more we choose it, the more often we choose it, like the likelihood that we choose it again, the likelihood that someone else will choose it goes up. And it's like, it's like a constant choice. Okay, like it reminds me of many decisions in my life. Like I'll see, like, there's one life path where everything's just kind of dim. It closes, it feels constricted. It's like, okay, there's one life path where I do what I'm comfortable with or what's familiar, and I slowly die. And I slowly die. Like there's no, like, I kind of know where that path goes, to not do the thing that, the inspired idea, or the, yeah, or to give in to an emotion. Like, okay, like, I guess, I'm the worst. You're like, okay, if I choose that, I see where it goes. It's not anything particularly enticing. Or there's like this unknown of like, okay, I don't know where that I don't know where that goes. I know where that goes, but I don't know where that goes. And in some ways it does. It feels like it's committing to an unknown. It feels like it's committing to the mystery. It's kind of committing to the mystery.
And you've done that every day. First with the 100 days.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah.
so now you're up to over 1,000 days,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds unreal. Have you had any sick days where you haven't done anything creative?
Okay, so there's a handful of days. There's like less than 5. There's less than 5 where I'm like, sketchy. All right. Sketchy. But overall, like, really no.
Wow.
Really no. It's now like, it's like 6 creative things. Like, oh, I wrote 3 poems, and then I made a song, and then I did a bit. I like it just is like, it's so wanting to come out. It's just constant. Because again, there was an intention to push my edges with the process too. So like at the end of the day, sometimes I'd be like, okay, did I really do something creative today? Right. And then sometimes the answer was no, and then I do one more thing. Like, okay, all right, I know it's 3 o'clock in the morning, but we're gonna like, and some of the best things have come out at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like right beyond when I thought I couldn't do more. And then there were other days where, like, there was one poem I wrote in the first 100 days called Creative, and it was about how actually like everything I did that day was creative, and I had discounted it.
Oh, wow.
Like I created Yeah, created feelings of well-being. I created like, I created a parking ticket. I created, created things for work. I created a space of safety with my sister. I created, like, we're always creating something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at some point it actually, the separation between creativity and who you are dissolves. um yeah, but every day's different. So
Reminds me, I had the thought some time ago that my job is just to be myself,
mm,
rather than thinking in terms of what generates money.
mm,
All the different things I do
mm,
contribute to my life.
mm. I love that.
But my biggest enemies are perfectionism and procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still struggle with those, or have all these days of creativity worn that down?
um I don't experience them the same way.
Mm.
I don't experience the
There's
same
hope.
way. Yeah, and so one of my favorite perfectionism hacks is like, if you believe that you're being created through and not you are the creator of the thing, then it's not your fault if it's not good.
Great, I like that.
You know, if the universe wants to make a
Mm.
shitty painting through me,
Yeah.
like, go for it. Like, go for it. And then I can look at it and be like, I don't know why you wanted to make that, but
Uh,
but cool. Like, we good? Cool. So there is a certain level of detachment from what is made. It's not my work. It's just, and of course, I feel deeply committed to expressing things to the best of my ability, or to try to express something fully. But yeah, like, there, like, certain self-critical, I get more hung up on, like, my relationship to being in the world than I do in my relationship to creativity. Like, I experienced procrastination and perfectionism all over there, but in the creative process itself, not as much. But yeah, the little bit of detachment helps. And then also, just like, that was part of the magic of the 1,000 days, is just, well, 100 days turned 1,000 days, is it just, I could see over and over again how, like, creating anything was just like an affirmation that we are creative, because there was also a deeper purpose to the creativity. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do something creative every day for 100 days so that I make really beautiful things that are important. Like, I didn't say that. Like, my intention was to be an open channel for creativity. And that, like, that's open, that's flexible. like whatever that is. And I can't say enough about intention, but if the intention is correct and in integrity and in alignment, and again, like, wanting to use creativity as part, literally, like, of my inner path, like, anything that it reflects to me has a deeper meaning, because I'm like, oh, cool, like, I hit a layer of perfectionism, like,
yeah.
well, that's been a cage, let's get rid of it. Or maybe it's a pattern, and, like, it's not even so personal, like, it just exists in the collective consciousness that that people are hard on themselves, or they feel guilty, or they feel afraid. And so it's like, of course these things would come up the deeper you go. Like, the deeper your intention is to love or grace or anything, everything that isn't in alignment with that will come up for review. And so, like, to know, like, hey, this is right on schedule, like, of course I should, like, of course I should feel this, because this is what's been blocking me from experiencing more of who I really am. So when it comes up, it's like, thanks for showing yourself. Thanks for showing yourself, so that can, like, be felt or moved through from a higher perspective. Because yeah, if we get too tangled up in, like, oh, this is who I am, or this is what always blocks me, or, like, turning it into a self-punishment loop. Because, like, honestly, also, I think procrastinating comes from trying to do things when the timing's not right. Like, and then you're hard on yourself for it. So the more we're able to trust our natural timing, to trust our process, to trust the things that don't look like they're great at the first try, the the cycles of creation and rest has also been a big theme that's emerged too. It's like, it's not all creativity. Like, the creativity exists from the rest periods, from the time in meditation, from the stillness, from, like, connecting with the earth and with nature and with trees. if we're feeling off, there's always something that's a little bit off in our process. It's like, oh, okay, like I rested, but not long enough. Or I didn't really fill myself back up. Or again, there's some other voice in my head that's doubting the process. But if I give myself space to breathe and exist, so much gets done, but in a totally different way. It's without like the authority parental figure that's like, all right, you have to sit down and do your creative work for 8 hours a day. Like, like you could do nothing. Like in some, like there's days where it's like, it's a slow morning. I make my food and then and then there's nature. And then right at the end of the day, it's like, oh, and it was all for this download that's happening now. But if I would have tried to force the download at 2 p.m. or something when it wasn't present, like doesn't really make sense. Does that make sense, Sam?
Yeah, and I was going to ask if you had a particular time of day when you committed to work on something.
No.
But I can definitely see how spontaneous you are.
Yeah. Because again, also it felt so important to me to like have a commitment, but not to be rigid.
Mm-hmm.
I know people are like, yeah, commit to the same time every day and have that be your creative space. But I've never found that to work for me. I also didn't try that hard. Didn't try that hard to make it work for me. But to me, like ideas are not limited to a certain time of day at all. And inspiration is not limited to a certain time of day. Often a lot of ideas do come in after meditation in the morning. Sometimes I work on them through the afternoon. Sometimes it's the whole day. Sometimes it's late at night. It just doesn't, it's not on a human schedule. It's not on a human schedule.
Yeah, I have 3 things that I try to do every day or intend to do every day. And that's some physical exercise, practicing singing, and then working on whatever my ongoing creative project is.
I love that.
And I definitely don't end up doing all 3 every day. If I at least do one, I'm pretty happy.
For sure.
I'd say probably 5 or so days a month, maybe more during some months lately. I end up doing all 3. Yeah, and often I'll be resisting something, and then when I finally do it, I find it enjoyable, and I think, why did I put this off? You ever have that experience?
I have done that. Because again, like self-criticism, really, we only keep it because we believe it serves us in some way. And so if we're still holding on to that, like, oh yeah, like, oh, this feels really good now, I should have done it earlier. Like, that's such a weird thought. Like, you don't even know what it would have been like if you would have done it earlier. Like, what if the resistance is your mind thinking things should be different than they are? And your body's reacting to that. I mean, like maybe your body just knows that it's like, no, we're gonna be creative at 6 p.m. This is 2 p.m. We're not we're not ready. And you're like, oh, why am I so resistant? I'm the worst. I'm like and yeah, if we can release the ideas of what we think should be happening, like I should feel inspired right now. Perhaps inspiration will come and perhaps it won't. But at least we won't be in this like weird turmoil space for 4 hours.
Well, it's a very interesting perspective to follow the body's lead on creative projects.
Yeah.
Because I tend to think of the mind as the creative thing.
No, the mind feels like it's like the filter. Like it helps for me. And the more I get in tune with the body, the more like I use my body as the feedback mechanism. You know, one of the things that came up somewhere along the way, I was a couple 100 days in, was this whole course for how to help people with their creativity came in. It's like a 30-day course, and each day there was videos about the consciousness of creativity, like how to change our relationship to it. So the first part of the course was all about increasing our sensitivity and our intuition, getting into like the subtlety of things, which includes our breath, include like getting into the body. And day 10 is called Your Body Can Edit Better Than Your Mind. Your body can edit better than your mind. And so, again, a lot of the times the body will have feedback that completely contradicts what the mind thinks. Like in a poem, right? Like I'll type something and I'll be like, the body will say, no, that doesn't feel right there. It needs to go over here. And the mind's like, but that's going to mess everything up. And it's like, okay, maybe. So then I save a copy of the document so that I have it. So the mind feels safe. Because got to take care of the mind along the way. Like, make sure, don't totally freak it out. So I made the mind feel safe by saving a copy of it. And then I was like, okay, so the body says this goes over here. So then I rearrange it. I find that the body gives feedback usually only like 1 to 3 steps at a time. Like, it doesn't give you the whole picture. And I'd use it with video editing too. Like, I'll see something and I'm like, all right, something feels off here. And then the mind's like, well, that's a big project to try to fix it. And I'm like, no, I know. But the body won't let me skate past it. So then I have to like go in and do the thing. But it'll just be like, oh, something's off. And I feel that the body actually has, as part of our like access point, it innately knows what is balanced. Dr. Hawkins' work, right? Like, the body is what can tell the difference between truth versus falsehood, not the mind. He said the mind cannot tell the difference between truth versus falsehood. And he uses muscle testing to be able to access the truth. And so if your body is the indicator of when truth is present and when it's not, or when coherence is present and when it's not, then of course, like, when you read something and you have a sensation, like, your body is the feedback mechanism for what's true. And I think that's partially why like the projects that get made feel the way they feel, is because many of, or most, if not, well, I use that. I use that. It's just like, okay, like, what is true? What is true? And when the body feels in resonance and it feels coherent and correct, and when it's posted, it's received by other people's bodies in the same way. It's like, you could, like, even if it's just like a little image, like a little, it could be a couple sentences, and someone's like, I felt that in my body. Like, they get like, they respond, I felt that in my body. I'm like, yeah, I felt it in my body too. Felt it in my body too. And there's a truth frequency that the more we tune into it, the more we know when it's present and we know when it's not. It takes like great dedication to consistency and like going into the subtleties of things. It's pretty trippy, actually. It's pretty trippy, Sam.
I feel like I'm the opposite of you in many ways in my work process. So I'm wondering, how can I apply more of your wisdom and the inspiration and spontaneity to what I do, which is mainly working on long book projects. Right now I'm working on a graphic novel. I've been working on this since 2018, so quite a few years now, and it's getting to the point now where I'm picking up more steam on it and aiming to at least think about it or work on it some every day. My goal is to sketch out at least a few panels every day, and I'm doing the rough art, and then I send that to an artist who's doing the final art. But when my goal is to work on the same project day after day, do the type of things you're talking about, would they apply to that in any way?
Question. So it is yes. And it's also like, how could the frequencies of truth not be available in every type of, like, how can that not be part of it? So my question to you is, have you ever felt the frequencies that I'm talking about?
In terms of when I'm in the flow, it's coming out the right way?
Yeah, it can be in anything, like a feeling of ease, connectedness, inner knowing. Like, you're in the body, but you're aware. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I have times of fear or I'm afraid things aren't going to turn out right. But generally, when I'm doing my sketches, I feel good. Yeah.
You feel good. Yeah. So do you feel that there's more to be experienced in that, or is actually your experience of it already perfect?
When I'm doing it, my experience is perfect. I build up a lot of, like I was saying, the perfectionism around it. And when I sit down, I'm doing rough sketches, so they're not perfect by any means. And I end up enjoying it and thinking, why was I worried about this not turning out? Or
Okay, I do still go through that experience in certain areas. It comes in waves, like every once in a while. Usually with photography jobs, people hire me and I have a meltdown beforehand. I'm like, but what if I won't? What if I can't? And then I'm like, oh, this was awesome. This was awesome. I don't know if this applies to you, but what I noticed last week when I had a meltdown about a photography job, I realized what was kind of paralyzing me ahead of time was I was afraid there was an expectation on me that I wouldn't be able to live up to what they wanted. and that the way that I do things isn't good enough. My process wasn't okay or something. Like it needed to look like what I thought the world would have wanted it to look like. Yeah, it came down to me like trusting that the way I do things is fine. Like it's power, like the way I do things is powerful. It doesn't look like the way other people do things. And so like, it came down to like a deeper trust. And again, like there's something about like showing up to meet someone else's expectations. So I'm wondering if there's, whether it's like the world, like what you think like the world wants from you, or what you think. Yeah. Because again, what I'm hearing is you're like, yeah, when I'm just in myself, I trust it. I feel great. I do the thing, but like something about how it's going to be received, or whether it's enough or something, that kind of like causes the little fun little experience beforehand.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's my own high standard
Mm,
and thinking, oh, I need to be in the perfect mood before I do
mm,
this so it will come out as well as I can possibly do it.
mm.
And then I might spend hours or days waiting for that mood to hit.
Waiting for the perfect mood. Yeah, I have found that also like that doesn't always, like some days it hits and other days you just have to start. Other days you just have to start.
Yeah. What you said about it flowing through. When I do sit down and I'm working on it, I definitely feel that it flows pretty easily most of the time.
Yeah. And again, like there's been times where like a couple days in a row, like I'll just do something for the sake of doing something. But then it like clears the way for on day 4 of having doing like I did 3 meaningless things in a row. Meaningless doodle, meaningless doodle, meaningless doodle, day 4, entire children's book. Would entire children's book have happened if I hadn't done like just these kind of like nightly doodles 3 days before? Not sure. There's also, I found that sometimes, and this is also in like the creativity course, but when we expand in one area, we expand in all areas,
Mm.
right? So we hit a block in something for certain reasons. Like the block is in some ways serving a purpose. Again, it could mean that the timing's not right, and we're just think that it should be. I've had sensations before that I needed to go through a consciousness shift before I could finish the project.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I had written the first two thirds of a children's book that got up to the point where like the main character was at their most blocked, and I knew essentially what the resolution of it was going to be, but I also had a feeling like I hadn't actually gone through the process myself yet.
Mm.
So I just let it be and was like, okay, like I need to know, like I need to be different before I can finish this. Like I need to like have lived what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to teach through this children's book. And over the next couple of months, there was like like I'd get like people would come in and they'd give me actually like the answers to it without knowing it. Or I got connected to a video that was like, oh yeah, like that. Oh, that's it. That's it. And so then 4 or 5 months later, the rest of it was able to be finished. But again, like I needed to be different. So in some ways it's like, okay, I could have stopped and thought that I was blocked and been like, I'm so blocked. Look at me yet again, not good enough, just
Yeah.
blocked. Or all these like dramatic stories we tell ourselves about like why the block is there. Or again, or it could just mean like you need to rest and refill yourself back up. It could be like timing's not right. You need to have a consciousness shift. You need to rest and refill. And also, I've had experiences where a block existed because I needed to shift my perspective. And so, like, for a little while, I was like, man, like, there's so many things I want to express and do and say. And I was feeling really blocked by the fact that I wanted to do so many different things. And then I realized that if I just like stepped back for a second, the predominant thing I was experiencing was actually that I had so much to say. And so then I wrote a poem about having so much to say. And then that allowed me to move forward. To wrap it all up together, one of the easiest ways that I've found to overcome blocks is to express the block.
Mm.
Because in some ways, if we try to override them and just plow through, like, I see you and also I'm ignoring you, like, I see you, perfectionism, I see you, like, I see you, and I just want to do the thing that I want to do. Like, I want to have the experience of feeling inspired, or I want to have this other experience, but I'm ignoring this part of myself that's feeling something different. It creates this internal struggle, and yeah, often doesn't give us access actually to what we really want. So I've found that if we express the block, it often moves through really quickly because it feels acknowledged,
Mm.
right? So there's literally, I have notebook papers where it's like, I'm hungry. This is dumb. Blah, 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 blah. What if I never make anything again? like, like, I feel weird. And then a poem in its entirety came
Mm.
right after that.
Wow.
Like, it's on the same page. It's on the same page of just nonsense. Like, but I couldn't, until I acknowledged like the body, the emotions, the things that I was currently experiencing. Again, it's like if the body is not on board, it's not yeah, it's like it
Mm.
wants to be acknowledged. And so yeah, so if you sit down to write and you're feeling something else, just quickly, like, like vomit it out.
Right.
Like, I'm so blocked. Like, I've been procrastinating all afternoon. Look at me go. I feel resistance. I feel weird. I feel blah, 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 blah. And then go from there. And then, like, see what happens next. It's quite possible that the more we acknowledge those little blocks, they decrease in consistency.
Mm.
So you might find that that block gets acknowledged 4 or 5, or who knows, maybe it's an ongoing one, but like it might slowly over
Mm.
time just actually be like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm seen. I'm allowed to exist. I'm fine. And I don't have to be so loud anymore to get their attention.
Yeah, that's a great idea. One I'll definitely aim to apply of
Yeah.
if I'm feeling resistance, working on my graphic novel to take some time to write out what that block is saying. That's terrific.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, and you can express it any way. You could sing it. You could, like, it doesn't have to be writing. You could like make a voice memo. Ah, this block is so dumb and I feel weird. Yeah, write it, sing it, paint it, like whatever feels easy. It could be a whole poem, it could be a thing, and you might unlock something along the way, see some deeper meaning for why it was present. It doesn't have to take a long time to acknowledge either, or it could. If you're like actually committed to applying that, give me data, tell me how it goes. Like, oh my
All
god.
right, I'll do that. Do you see yourself
Yeah.
ever doing a longer form project?
I have many longer form projects
Hmm.
in the works, actually. The video from 1,000 days actually took, it was like a 9 month thing.
Okay.
that wasn't a one day.
Yeah.
Wasn't a one day thing, but needed some breaks and some consciousness shifts along the way. Like I got to certain points and I needed to for a while the words weren't accessible. I needed to leave a relationship. I needed to I needed to do all these things before I could actually get it completed. So that was like a longer term. I have like a whole book of poems that's almost done.
Oh, great.
Eventually I'll step into illustrating stuff. I haven't got, it's not time yet for that.
Yeah.
And there's a spoken word, a longer like form spoken word thing that I'm working on, and other things too. But those are the ones that I'm talking about. But,
Mm.
yeah.
Well, I feel like we're just getting started talking, but I'd better let you go. Uh,
It's funny when you open up the whole universe, how much you're just like, and there's more. And there's more.
yeah.
But,
It always takes me a while to warm up, and I'm always nervous before talking to
mm,
someone, but then,
mm,
yeah, once it gets going, I don't want it to end.
yeah.
But all things must come to a pause.
To quote unquote end. First, I committed to 100 days and I went 200 days. And then I took a break from posting for a couple weeks, but I was still doing creative stuff. And then I committed to doing a year of posting. So at the end of the year, right? The end of the year. So it was really day 500 something. But I was getting close to, like day 364 of day 365 of that part of the commitment. There was this question of like, how do I end this? Like, how do I end this segment? And I was holding that question in mind for like a week because it was just like, am I supposed to do another like big epic finale thing? Like, I don't know. But this little poem came in called Unexpressed, and I have it memorized so I could say
Please,
it.
please do.
Just kind of like close the thing. So the poem Unexpressed. What if there will always be something at the edge of your heart in the process of transmuting the formless to art? And if there will be ideas forever in queue, perhaps there's no need for pressure on you. What I'm trying to call to your sweet attention is the possibility there's a bit of tension between the mind and what's floating in there versus what you're actually able to create and to share. Because the universe is endless and you're the funnel. And obviously, that's a pretty small tunnel to take the infinite and bring it to earth. So please be patient with the ideas you birth. And maybe there will be a day when the universe has said everything it wanted to say and brought to light all it wished to convey. But who really knows? It might not, or it may. But until it has manifested itself completely, don't worry about tying your loose ends so neatly. It's far more important that you're flowing and free, fully enjoying what it's like to be me. So, yeah, show up and do your thing. Sing the songs you want to sing. But the moment you find yourself in stress, connect to your joy and release the rest. For if you've truly lived and had your fun, why would you need to be entirely done? You've always been the best you could. It's time to release those ideas of should. There's grace to be found in letting things end without wishing they were more than what they had been. And dear, just know that if this is the way that life saw it best, there must be beauty in part of you remaining unexpressed.
That's great. I love it.
You little poem.
With a lot of wisdom packed in there.
It was day 500 something. So thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah, you're an inspiration to me, and I appreciate so much that you took time to talk.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you for receiving me, for creating such a space that like I felt comfortable sharing in. That's significant and speaks to who you are. So thank you.